Recording in progress.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming to Webcomic Collectives, the how, the what, and the why. Uh, Make sure we're going to have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation, and that'll be done primarily through the chat. So save those questions, and I'll let them panelists introduce themselves.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our panel, the Webcomic Collectives, the how, the what, and the why. I am Christina, also known as Delphina online. I make the webcomic Somnambulus, and I am not advancing to the next slide. I am here with a few of our amazing collective mates from the SpiderForest Webcomic Collective at spiderforest.com. So let's just line in icon order and introduce ourselves and our comics.
So I am Darwin, also known as Denise in the real world. I create 3 comics all under the umbrella of Darwin Comics, SpiderForest.com. One is teen level and the other 2 are a mature audience. I am one of the administrators for the site, and I work with databases and helping people set up their sites as well as moderation.
Oh, gee, I'm next. Hi, I'm Kimmy. I'm the little green-haired one there. Let's see, I make the webcomic Witch of Delphina. I just figured out how to make it in my background right before the call started. I think I joined SpiderForest maybe a couple years ago. It was 2 or 3 years ago, something like that. But I had been a lurker in the Discord for a long time up until then, because I actually had a friend who had joined. So I had been just hanging around since like 2018 or something.
Nice.
I'm Max. I'm the artist for Jack Beloved. And I joined SpiderForest back in 2021. And I've been a member most of the time. I was an admin briefly, but then I got too busy, so now I'm not an admin anymore.
Life happens. Go ahead, Ellie.
Hi. Oh, yeah, hi. I'm Eliushi or Ellie, Eli, whichever, for short. And I'm a Taiwanese Canadian author, illustrator, and I create anything from short comics to like multi-book epics, as long as there are stories about hidden monsters, lost magic, sad robots, etc. I make Key Space, a Wing-Tailed, a science fantasy webcomic about kids with wings for hair in the SpiderForest Collective.
I'm Christina. I've joined SpiderForest in 2019, and I've loved it ever since. I have a few comics. My first comic was called 14 Nights. I've also done a comic called Yasha Lizard, but the comic that I do with SpiderForest is called Alethea, and it's a sci-fi comic about robots who've been abandoned by their creators. I don't have a picture of my webcomic in the background, so please enjoy this tomato, which I'm growing. I'm very proud.
I love this tomato. Oh my gosh. I couldn't figure that out either. The picture thing evaded me, but yeah. The SpiderForest Webcomic Collective has been around since 2024. The collective is old enough to go to college now. It's like 21 years old. Oh my goodness. And we have about 100 active members at any given time. And you can check us out at spiderforest.com. And we also have an application season coming up in 2 short weeks. So if you are a maker of a webcomic and if what we talk about today seems fun to you, you can check us out at spiderforest.com/apply and see all that good stuff. So first we got to know, what is a webcomic collective? Collectives can be a little confusing for some people, but basically they can revolve around any kind of craft, and they make a lot of sense for webcomics because people who read webcomics usually like to read a lot of webcomics, and people who make webcomics often are at it for several years, and having that community and that solidarity just makes the whole ride a lot more fun. So the other cool thing about webcomic collectives is you get to choose your neighbors. On platforms where you just make an account or maybe generalized comic chat groups that you might join, you may be a little jumbled in with people who aren't really doing the same thing you are, but you can choose to make a webcomic collective focused around any kind of criteria you want based on the membership's goals. So you can form it around genre or particular story styles or like the language. Honestly, lots of options that you could go for a webcomic collective. We're a little more general at SpiderForest. We kind of do a lot of things, but basically it's stuff we like. And then finally, collectives are a group where you still control the rights to your comic. There still may be light rules around what you can or can't do depending on the group. But if there are, you're going to have a lot more say in what those rules are versus a publisher or a platform. So that's just the basic rundown. And I'm going to throw it back to the group at this point. What drew you to becoming part of a webcomic collective? We'll go in icon order again.
So I actually got into webcomics because inactive member of this particular collective knew that I drew, knew that I wrote books, and said, "Hey, I think your webcomic, which had just started at the time, would be really good for this particular collective that we're in." And so she convinced me to apply. And at the time, I was looking for something a little bit better than like the Duck or Comic Genesis at the time. And so I gave it a shot. And initially, I didn't get in. So I waited 2 more years, and the same person came back to me again and said, "Hey, look, try again, give it another shot." Because I was a little bummed, of course, that I didn't make it the first time. And so when I got in, I found that it's like one of the most supportive, inclusive communities that I've ever been in. And as a hobbyist, it was nice to not to feel like I had to be profitable in order to be a part of the group. So that was very nice for me. And since I've been a part of the collective, I have improved my storytelling skills, my visual storytelling skills. My art has improved drastically since 2011 when I joined. So there's been a lot of things that being a part of the community helped me get support for without there's no judgment. And that's the great thing about this collective is there's like no judgment. They don't we like to have stories that are well done and well told, and the art is passable. It doesn't have to be perfect. And that was one of the things that allowed me to grow, because I came in with art that was kind of rough, and through interacting with other people within the site, I was able to actually improve my craft all the way around. So it's been a really pleasurable and fun experience for me to be a part of this collective.
All right, am I up next?
Go for it, Kimmy.
Yeah, let's see. So I think I first became aware of it, I think I mentioned earlier, in like 2018-ish timeframe. At the time, I was going to some local comic meetups that were like physical, like clubs meeting in my area. I live in the Seattle area, and that was already quite fun. But one of the things that I noticed is that oftentimes you would get people who would be kind of just all over the place creatively, where maybe they're making a video game, maybe they're just kind of sketching their characters, maybe they're an expert at drawing just one eyeball with a bunch of eyelashes on it. And so I'm talking to some people there, and someone I knew was like, "Oh yeah, I'm part of this webcomic collective. It's called SpiderForest. Basically, you build your website, you put your little banner at the top, you can click at the banner, you can see all these other webcomics." And I was like, "Oh, hey, maybe I should check that out, because I just want to be in a place with a bunch of other webcomic creators, because there's really something about like everyone having that in common, because that's where I first started going to learn, like, how do you promote your comic? How do you make ads? How do you make website? How do you storytell? How do you hone your craft? And so having a place where it's like everyone is like on the same page trying to do the same thing is really nice. So it's a creator community. And I think when I did actually, so I had applied initially like back in probably 2018, and I didn't get in. And honestly, my comic was pretty early back then, so I was like, yeah, I'll come back later. So when I did apply a few years later, So I did get in. I had gone through a round of feedback, kind of fixed some confusing parts of my story. And I remember asking myself, I think it was around 2021 or something, I'm like, why? Like, what am I trying to get out of this? And that might be a question we have later on too. I don't remember. But I think the short answer that I came to was, I just want to be around people who are working on the same problems as me, who will have answers to questions that I have, who um, also, I wanted to practice making websites for people because I'm on the website bring up team now. And I guess I'll
We
just leave my
appreciate
answer
that.
at that before I ramble too much.
No, that's great.
I joined, my big motivation was to find a community of people who are pretty serious about comics. Everyone in SpiderForest, even if they fell off of comics, when they joined, they have to have at least some body of work. So our criteria is at least one full chapter. And that really was attractive to me because I've been trying to find community in webcomics. I had joined a couple of Discords and I just, they were fun, but kind of mirroring what Kimmy's experience. It was kind of a similar experience where there was a very wild range of experience from almost no experience at all to some people who were actively making money at it. So what I really like about SpiderForest, also similar to what Darwin said, is there a lot of us are doing this as hobbies. I would consider myself kind of a hobbyist too. I make a little bit, but not not a whole lot. But anyways, really the community has been huge for me, being able to connect with others who are creative in the same way and being able to share. We give each other a lot of feedback, and so able to receive and give feedback. Being able to just kind of commiserate about, we're the only ones. Well, not the only ones, but we're a group that can kind of gets it as far as how running a webcomic is like, and it's not a very common experience that you're going to encounter like every day. I was making my comics in 2019, and I had really wanted it to be part of something like SpiderForest, and I had heard about it just by looking around. And I was very happy that I got in 2021, was able to connect with others, and we kind of we promote each other and help each other get our work out there a little bit more. It's not like a publisher and that it's going to be super widespread, but it helps because you can have a quality comic, but sometimes you need that little boost.
True.
Yeah, I echo a lot about what Max is saying as well. I was also looking to join like a community where the members are serious and are not only committed to making their own comics, but are also seeking to help others and collaborate on projects. And so, yeah, like what Max is saying, like compared to a publisher or like casual comic discourse, I found that being a webcomic collective affords more flexibility in the engagement process, but also retain that motivational drive to produce something that, such as your, very long-standing webcomic, but also something that is bigger for a group. And sort of compared to my experience working with a publisher, the deadlines made things like quite stressful. There was less time and opportunity to socialize with the staff and other creators. And then, there are more ample resources kind of connected with being in a publisher that are tailored to my needs, like editing services and promotional material. But overall, I found that being a webcomic collective also has a lot of good resources that's shared amongst its members as well. And then in contrast, in like casual comic discords, it can be, a pitfall to just engage in the promotional side or just engage in just talking about the comics rather than creating. But overall, like in those situations, some server-wide events can be fun. And it's also where I've made a lot of comic friends, including the ones from SpiderForest, which kind of put that up into my radar, potentially finding a home for Key Space. But yeah, like in summary, I didn't want something that was like publisher driven, that comes with its own like kind of stress and wasn't really prepared to deal with at that time of joining. And then I also wasn't really super interested in forums where ideas were pitched around, but weren't really substantiated because everyone was so busy and there wasn't a huge motivational drive to be committed at that time. So I joined SpiderForest Discord server a couple years back, found the culture to be friendly and the creators to be very inspiring. It also offered web hosting at the time of application, so I decided to apply, see if I was a good fit, and so here we are.
Yeah, I'll add a few things to that. So back in 2019, when I first joined, I'd been published with a few anthologies before, and I found that, well, I was hoping to get some sense of community from participating in these anthologies, and it really didn't happen. I didn't get any chance to really make friends with the other anthology participants, so I was looking for something that was more community focused, and that's what drew me originally to SpiderForest. And I think what Delphina said earlier about like the collectives are often formed around something like either a genre or something like that. And I think that SpiderForest is kind of formed around like shared values, as everyone's talking about just right now. Everyone's mentioned like the desire to improve yourself and your craft. And I think that's really strong in our collective. We're always trying to improve our writing and our storytelling. And that also drew me to SpiderForest and to be part of a collective as opposed to just a group that publishes together. So we always give feedback and receive feedback. And also the valuing of webcomics as their own medium and their own reward, because I remember back in 2019, it seemed like along in the social media sphere, like Twitter, there was a lot of people who would do like a short webcomic to kind of as part of their CV to get into animation or get into published comics. But I really wanted to be part of a space that valued webcomics for themselves. And that's another reason that drew me to SpiderForest.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like there are a lot of shared values and a lot of like we all kind of think about web comics the same way. So that's yeah, really important, I think, too. And yeah, it makes a lot of sense to look into collectives because a lot of things are easier in a collective as opposed to going it alone. A couple broad categories of things are web hosting costs. That's actually one of the core things that we offer in SpiderForest, and I feel like has only gotten more important over the years with all of the platforms like Webtoons and Tapas and stuff, because we believe if you want your own website for your comic, you should be able to have that and you should be able to have full control over that. So you can apply to SpiderForest if you have a website. If you don't have a website, we'll give you the space to make your own website. But that's one of the values that's important to us. Another thing is conventions are a little easier in a collective, whether that's pitching in for a bigger table that you apply for together, or just being able to share a meal or a hotel room with somebody you've actually met when you're both going to be in the same city at the same show. So that's another thing that's pretty cool. I think printing your work is also a thing that webcomics artists in particular don't always have experience doing because we're just posting our comics on the web. Um, and sometimes webcomic artists might want to try to get into that sort of thing, but they don't necessarily know how. So that's where like you could put together anthologies or group projects and share that cost and that work and that experience. And in our experience, this has actually been a great way for people to get their first comics into print. So just another thing that you can do. Smaller scale collaboration is also something that makes a lot of sense for web comics that have similar aspects. So that might include art trades, secret Santas, or pieces where each artist puts in a character into a composition. We do those a lot at SpiderForest, which also tends to go hand in hand with the next thing, which is sharing readership with other comics. It's hard for readers to find good stuff sometimes. So seeing a creator they like, sharing banners or art trades with another comic can get them curious to check it out. And then lastly, creators who are invested in you and your work will be able to give you much more meaningful critique to improve, and also to be there to empathize or help more meaningfully when you're going through difficulties. You know, you're trying to set up your website, there's a weird comment thing going on in your comment section. It's always just so nice to be able to have a group of people like, yeah, I don't have to explain everything about how a comment section works to you. You get it. This is, you know, so having that sanity check can just mean the difference between making webcomics a very pleasant experience versus a very stressful experience. And presumably you also have the opportunity to be around for other people in the same ways. So I'm going to throw it back to the group again. What have you found to be a cool opportunity, or your favorite parts of being in a collective? We'll go in reverse order from right to left this time. So Christina, start us off.
Okay, thank you. I won't cover everything. I'll tell you one of my favorite things about being in Webcomic Collective is you can meet people from all over the world, and basically anytime that I'm going to go travel and visit a different city, I'll just type in our Discord and say, does anyone live in this city and want to meet up and just hang out? And like every time there's been somebody. So I've met so many SpiderForest members from around the world, and it's just been amazing. Yeah, okay. I'll leave it at that so other people have time.
I absolutely love our monthly banner collaborations. It's sort of what Christina was talking about, where the creators of SpiderForest will come together and have someone make a background and someone put in their characters from their webcomics, and they interact with each other and do something with a monthly theme. And that becomes our web header banner. It's a lot of fun designing and contributing characters to these other backgrounds, and I truly feel that it helps bring members together. I also wanted to give a little bit of a shout out to our anthology project, where we did a Kickstarter and have our members contribute short stories and went ahead to print. And I learned a lot from not only doing the promotional aspect of the Kickstarter, but also like what Christina said about printing, because when doing just a webcomic, it was, it still was a learning curve to just, actually make the pages and posting it online and then promoting it yourself, but actually to put it out as a book. It was a lot of fun learning alongside other motivated creators. I'll also leave it at that to allow the other members to kind of talk about their favorite parts.
Okay. Well, for me, a lot of it has to do with connecting with others and being able to go to conventions with other people. I think without SpiderForest, that would have been a lot more difficult to arrange to be able to meet up with people or table with people. So I'm very grateful for that. The banner collab, I agree, lots of fun. It's really fun to see what people come up with for their characters and to see it all come together. I've had the opportunity. I think a lot of us have the opportunity to kind of start with like a background, and then we just kind of put, we say, okay, put the characters here, and it's really cool seeing that come together, especially if you're the one that made that background. It's awesome. Also, just in terms of being able to get assistance for things like when I first printed the books, I had no idea what I was doing. So I got a lot of help, which I'm extremely grateful for. Just figuring that process out, and how to actually do it. And so now I have that under, that skill set, or at least a little bit better than it was because of that. And I've also met a lot of people in person. I met Delphina a couple of times. Kimmy, I think I encountered you briefly at some point.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so I think it was SPX one year. But yeah, that's really awesome too, is being able to, if I am in an area where there happens to be a clump of SpiderForest people, it's really awesome to be able to meet up with them. And I've gotten along with everybody I've met so far, so that's awesome too. Kind of goes back to the shared values things.
Yeah, it's a good
So
group.
far, pulls out a knife.
Kimmy's going rogue.
Ah, yeah. Okay. Am I up now?
Go for it.
Let's see. What opportunities has being in the collective opened up to me? I think one thing that's been nice is that I'll kind of get like I get to sort of piggyback on everyone else's exploration. So as everyone's looking for new ways to do things, like just for example, all of us are kind of like self-hosting our comics. And so the other day someone's like, what about Commentix? How do we feel about Commentix? How are we using this? And and I know I was going to explore updating Discuss to Commentix on my website, but we had this whole conversation about it where someone, what was it, Darth Biomech, he wrote a script to convert a Discuss export. I'm sorry, I won't go too much into tech, but he wrote a script to basically convert a commenting system from one thing to another. And it's just cool being in the rooms where people are discussing these things, because then it's on my radar. I know about it. I can evaluate it, sit there and contemplate, is it worth migrating my website from one commenting system to another? Not to mention just people discussing like, hey, how is, Comic Ad Network working out for you? Is there anything else that people should be trying? We can swap stories about Renta, like putting weird werewolf ads on our website. Um,
That
things
was a
like that.
time.
That was a time. Um, and also another thing it's a little bit difficult to quantify, but I think what I would say is that, sometimes you'll be like on social media and, this is kind of a thought I had before I joined. I was like, well, what difference does it make if I join a collective if I can just follow all these people on social media? Because I'm just going to hear what they're saying anyways. But like, here's a very specific example for why I kind of like being like in the members' Discord channels. When I was getting ready to print my book, and like I would hold it up, but Zoom will hilariously blur it out. Oh yeah, see, you can't see my book. um, but when I went to go print my book, I was like, what should the paper thickness be? And the thing is, you can't see my bookshelf, but hey, you see a bookshelf that I drew. So pretend that's my bookshelf. I had books from SpiderForest people, and I would pick one up and I would feel the paper, and I'd be like, what paper thickness did you use? I could just straight up ask them. I'm like, because I like the feeling of this paper, and I'm like trying to gauge like what I want to do for my book. And so it was a lot easier to just have direct access to some of these people and ask them questions. And I just feel like it would have been more awkward if I was like following them on like, Blue Sky, being like, how'd you print your book? Because, they're going to be like, who the heck are you? And so once I'm in the collective, I feel like I have this rapport built up with them. And so, it's more expected that I'm going to be asking those sorts of questions. And we can totally just spam the channel with pictures of our books and show how floppy the paper is and like zoom into the art. And it's the kind of junk that might not be I don't know, necessarily good for a Twitter feed, but it's totally fine if you're just chilling on a Discord server. Um, and I think I had touched on this earlier, but the other point I kind of wanted to make is that I've definitely gotten exposed to a lot more like website building stuff, which was something that I had always wanted to learn more about. And beforehand, I think I had like meddled around with Grawlix and WordPress, but I was also kind of like, it always felt like I was diffusing a bomb where if I cut the wrong wire, my whole website explodes and I'm gonna cry. And
That's a
it's
mood.
funny because like I am technically like trained in software, but I was not trained in website. And so I'm like, guys, my website's not coming up. What am I doing wrong? And people will be like, have you done this thing? Have you done this thing? And it's really nice just having people who've like been through it and they know exactly what you're dealing with. Because honestly, part of my goal is I wanted to get ramped up to the point where I could start answering questions for other people. Because it's like, dang it, I should know this. I think that's all I had for this one.
So I'm gonna piggyback off of Kimmy because I know that for me, I started out doing straight HTML when I first started my site. Kez built me a site, and then she said, "Okay, now it's yours. You got to maintain it." And I went, "Ah!" So I know the feel of that freaking out and waiting for your site to explode because I've been there. And every time I build a site, I break it at least once. So don't feel bad. We all do it. The other thing I wanted to mention before I get into my favorite parts of this is that Delphina owns the list of the most people that she has met in SpiderForest so far. What are you up to? 9, 10, 12?
42.
I've met 2.
No,
42. Okay, I was
yeah.
way off base. So
Wow, that's
I've met
impressive.
2. I've met Delphina. I've met Kez. I want to say I met a third, but I can't remember who that was. Oh, I met no, I met two more. I met Dio and I met, oh, I'm blanking her name. Fish. I met Fish. So I've met 4 people. Okay, I have a bit more than I thought. So yes, meeting people is definitely one of those big things because nobody believes me, but I'm an introvert. And so being in spaces like this is a little bit easier for me to actually interact with people because I'm that wallflower in real life. I will sit there and wait till I hear a conversation I think I can jump in on before I even talk to anybody. So being online is a little bit easier for me. And so nobody believes that I'm an introvert because I'm all over the place in SpiderForest spaces. Anybody here can tell you that. So one of the things that I think was a huge opportunity before, beyond being able to build sites in several different content management systems, I've learned HTML. I have learned a proprietary one that our founder put together called ProPanda. I've learned Grawlix. I've poked at WordPress. I don't like WordPress, but I've had that opportunity. Another opportunity that happened for me very early on in my time in SpiderForest was I took over one of our big cross promotions, which was called Comics of the Week. So this was before I was even an admin or a moderator. I was just a regular individual in the site. And I thought it was a wonderful cross promotion opportunity. And they said they were tired of doing it. So I took it over. And I have been doing it, I think, since 2012 or 2013. I have been doing it for quite a while now. So it's a huge cross promotion. We all do weeks worth of multiple comics being spotlighted. All of the people who want to be involved, it's completely voluntary. The people who want to be involved, they give materials over, and I put together like little blurbs that they give me and format it. So all I have to do is just give them the code for the week. They put it into their blog or their commenting area or however they want to handle it. I think we had one person who coded an entire piece of their website just for the SpiderForest spotlights, which was amazing. So this is like our biggest cross promotion of the year. It allows us to really show our audiences some of the other people that are involved in our sites, cross genres, cross art styles. It really covers pretty much everything. And I know that the feedback I've gotten every year, pretty much everybody who gets involved is really happy with the turnout. I mean, not everybody gets huge bumps, but everybody gets bumps. So we get big bumps in readership or little bumps in readership, and then we get people who continue to follow after the spotlights are done. So that was a big opportunity for me to really organize things and be in charge of something big. And so that's something that I kind of insist on every year. And I hope nobody like thinks I'm stepping on toes or anything.
Absolutely not.
But that's pretty much like my biggest opportunity.
How dare you
Yeah.
help us?
I love it. No, okay. Well, yeah, I mean, so we've been talking about like these are aspects of the collective that we are all in, the existing collective that we know and love. And like we said at the top of the presentation, SpiderForest will be open for applications in 2 weeks, starting in June. But there are thousands of webcomics out there, and keeping a lot of smaller groups out there will help people find common groups that they gel with. So as much as we love SpiderForest, you could also start thinking about making your own collective, gathering together people doing the same kinds of things you're doing and figuring out some goals for yourself based on some of those things that we talked about, shared values or genres or whatever you got going. So I just wanted to touch on that briefly. The 4 basics that will be essential to figure out pretty quickly are a recruiting process. So if the membership votes, you might want like a application process, which means communicating what kinds of members or comics you're looking for, getting a voting system in place, and getting those new members invited and settled in. We do like voting at SpiderForest. We like letting every member have a choice in choosing their neighbors and having familiarity and enthusiasm for the new members' work as soon as they join. That's always like the most exciting time of the year for us because we just have this like constant party stream of like, yay, they came, they're here, we love your comic. And I just really recommend it. But invitation only is also an option, which might make your life easier logistically when you're first starting out, trying to get members together. I do recommend some kind of intent to regularly bring in new members, because webcomics start and stop all the time, and keeping an active and engaged member base is going to make all of those cool things possible. Second thing is funding. Sometimes your ideas cost money. So there's all kinds of ways that you can approach that depending on the skills and interests of your members. Listed out a couple of things here. I will say, in our experience, formal business registration requires tax reporting paperwork that artists are not enthusiastic about, and it's possibly not going to provide much in the way of benefits for you either. But that does put you in a kind of weird spot with somebody keeping and managing the money that you raise. So making sure you have a baseline level of trust, and whatever they're doing with the money is well documented, is a good idea, because you don't want to get into fights about people stealing money. That's bad stuff. And part of sustainability is also keeping up with external and internal communications that are going on all the time. So that means keeping up with the website, keeping up with a newsletter if you're doing that, or social media, and just making sure everything is functional and updated over the years, that you're on the platforms that you want to be on. That's all going to help keep readers and potential members know what you're up to. But then on the flip side of that is the internal communications. So members need to have an opportunity to contribute and know what you're doing. So all of these things will require repeating yourself a lot. So take turns, or find somebody who doesn't mind chatting a lot. Next thing is, in addition to some of the admins, making the official announcements, you also want to encourage communication between members, because that's where the magic happens. So any social media platform or messaging platform runs the risk of becoming unsupported or unusable. There have been years where SpiderForest, everybody was on our forums, then everybody was on Skype, then everybody was on Facebook, then everybody was on Twitter, and now it seems like Discord is where we live, and that's pretty common for a lot of groups. But if this pattern continues, maybe not forever. And even if you have a platform that you can control and you can keep updated on your own servers, there are widespread communication habits that you can't control. So as people become acclimated to new social media, you may lose interest in certain ways of communication. So listen to your members, pay attention to what's working for them, and encourage them to meet each other and plan projects and events together. Um, the A very important aspect of this is keeping that communication respectful and moderated. That's also going to be important for misunderstandings and clashes. So a policy charter or a code of conduct will help with this, so everybody's on the same page about what is and isn't appropriate and constructive. And then lastly, I'm saying you need to figure this out. You, as the potential leader of this awesome webcomic collective. But collectives are not just one person telling people what to do and everybody else doing them. Collectives can and need to be about more than just the founding members. So you do want leaders to make a final call in some situations, but ideally every member should feel like a steward to some extent. When members have that stewardship, it provides the push to make new projects happen and guidance about where the group wants to go. And that attitude, in my experience, makes the most incredible things happen with a group. So yeah, I really want to see like more collectives out there. I feel like there's so much opportunity. And I'm just gonna push it to wrap it up with the team's final thoughts. Advice to people either looking to start a new collective or be part of a existing collective. Yeah, start us off, Darwin.
Oh, see, I thought we were going to go in reverse order again. Okay. So one of the things I think that makes SpiderForest so strong, and one of the reasons I think it's lasted so long, is because, as you said, the stewardship, but also the leadership is not just one person. We have up to 8 individuals who collectively work to administrate the spaces that we have. So one of the things about that is it allows for redundancy. So we have multiple people who can do the same thing. We have certain people who are accessible to the finances for the group. We have certain people who are able to get into the databases and the back ends of the websites and work with those if errors occur. We have always talking about policies. We are always talking about if something heats up between members, how can we mitigate that? I think that's one of the biggest, strongest things about our process is that we have a group of 8 who are responsible for making sure that things keep running smoothly. And we're always looking for, through our membership, for potential new administrators as they come up the chain. Another piece of advice would be, as a member of a collective, to be able to listen to the advice that's given to you by other people, taking what you feel is important and kind of setting aside the rest, collaborating, communicating. It's not all about us. It's not all about the individual. It's about the people around us too. So we try to make sure that we're communicating and being supportive of every member in there. More overarching, I know that many people are seeking a check in the box, and we want people to know that SpiderForest is not the only collective out there. We are not a validation of quality or that sort of thing. And each person who creates something has value in their work. So if you apply here or you don't get in, don't take that as a like, oh, I'm not worth it. My comic's not worth it. It's not that. We get so many quality comics every year that apply that sometimes it gets hard for us to decide who comes in and who goes out, because we do only have limited resources and we only have limited volunteers who can help get those people up and running on their websites. So it's not a mark of approval. Everybody's got worse than their webcomic. As I said, I started out with a very rough art comic because I tried to do 4 things at once. I tried to start a webcomic, do digital art for the first time, use a tablet for the first time. So it was a mess when I first started. So just be graceful with yourself and just keep trying, because that is going to be one of those things that allows you to get into one of these groups and enjoy what you see there and what you participate in.
My turn.
Go for it.
So I guess I'll start with the advice on if someone's looking to start a new collective. So I can't speak specifically to here's what it's like to be a founder, because I've never been a founder of a collective, but I was once part of a group of comic artists who tried to start, let's just say, a large project. And it had a lot of momentum behind it in the beginning. And then near the end, everyone started to have life stuff that started to pull them away. And we all kind of dropped off like flies right at the last minute. And I think that something I see that SpiderForest does well that I feel like can help remedy those sorts of situations is, like Delphina mentioned, the stewardship. Hold on, my cat is here. Go, shoot. Sorry. Stewardship, what was the other one? Managing your scope, and also like, what was the other one? Sorry, I had a list. And also just kind of understanding like what your culture and values are going to be. So it's like, you don't want to say, okay, here's a collective, and then have a bunch of people join, and then they all kind of show up, fill out their forms, and then disappear again. Because then it's like, where's my fam at, you know? But at the same time, you don't want to say, hey, let's start a collective, and also we're gonna run an entire comic festival, and we're gonna rent out the Orb in Las Vegas. You know, you're not don't do that. You know, make sure you're not biting off more than you can chew. And so there's kind of this balance of like, okay, what are we actually trying to do? What is our mission here? And how do you find people who are invested in kind of helping the collective go forward, you know? And what does the volunteering work look like? Because it is kind of volunteering at the end of the day. It's like, hey, I'm going to put together this little promo graphic, or hey, I'm going to show up and blab at people on a Zoom call. Don't worry, I love blabbing at people on Zoom calls. Um, what was I also going to say? I think everyone else will probably have more interesting things to add to the starting a new collective. So I'm going to shift gears to answering the second part of the question, which is advice for when you're joining an existing collective. I think the first thing is just, you know, try to find a place that you vibe with, you know, look at the comics that are already in there, figure out like what's their deal, what's their theme. Because it's kind of like, oh, hey, I read a bunch of these comics, you know, I'm going to try applying to their collective because I just think we're on the same wavelength with our brains. And that was kind of the thing that had gotten me to join in the first place, because it's like, you know, sometimes I'll find like a comics group or a collective, or heck, just going to like my comic meetups, and you'll meet someone who says, I do comics, and you go, cool, me too. And then you both swap a comic and you pick it up and go, oh, this is a whole different animal than what I was thinking when I said comics. Like this person is drawing like, and this is like no shade at all, just a different animal. It's like this person is drawing zines of like some very hyper specific cartoon from the 90s or something, or this person is drawing superhero comics and I'm not really doing superhero comics, or this person is, you know, kind of just doing something way outside of my wheelhouse. So it's like you should probably check out what they're doing in the collective, and you don't want to show up there and be like, oh, this is a costume party and I'm not wearing a costume, you know. Another thing I think that a lot of people don't realize when they're applying to collectives is you can ask them questions, because I think sometimes we get people who are like, oh, I want to join, but there's this requirement that they have, and I'm not really clear on what that means. It's like, just ask. You know, we got the Discord. If you want email, we got email. We got the social medias. You can just add us. You know, and just be like, hey, clarification. Like, I think I had to do that when I applied, because I was like, hey, I applied in like 2018. And then it's been like 5 years or 4 years or something. And now there's a rule that says that if you were rejected previously, you need to solicit feedback before applying again. Like, does that affect me? And everyone's like, sure. And I'm like, all right, cool, no problem. Let's do that. I'll ask for feedback. Um, because it had been a long time, but I was like, yeah, sure. I mean, I could use feedback anyway. So yeah, if there's any ambiguity, just like ask questions, because oftentimes the rules are there for a reason, but the reason might not be immediately apparent to you. And sometimes it's not what you think it is. Let's see what else. Oh, so there was another thing that I've kind of been thinking about, and this was something that was going through my head when I did apply to SpiderForest, which was like, you know, what is my plan exactly, you know, as a, like, what's my comics career, and what does it look like if I get into SpiderForest and if I don't get into SpiderForest? Because it's not like, oh, if I don't get in, I'm going to quit my entire comic. I kind of thought to myself, well, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, and I'm probably going to keep finding community spaces, and I'm going to keep getting feedback from people, and I'm going to keep promoting it. And if I don't get in, it just means that like my vibe isn't vibing with their vibe, and I'll just find another place to go, because it's like I don't need this is what I'm saying, but I would be happy to contribute to it. And so I think it's useful to figure out like what your relationship is to the collective and why you're applying to it when you start trying to get into it. Because it's not like getting a job somewhere where it's going to start paying your bills. You know, it's not like, aha, if I get this job, I'm going to achieve all of my life goals. It's like just kind of think through, you know, where you're going to go with this, and maybe your goal is to come back and apply again in a future year. Like, I don't know. So I think that's useful to keep in mind, so it doesn't feel like the be all end all when you apply.
Absolutely. All right, Max.
Okay, so a lot of people already said a lot of stuff that I was going to talk about.
I'm
No.
sorry.
No, you're fine. No, that's awesome. But I think the big thing is kind of reflecting what other people are saying too, is that you make sure the values are kind of at least aligned with your values when you're checking out a collective. I think we've had a couple of people apply who the values probably weren't a good match. It's happened in the past. and they didn't. It was clear like they didn't really maybe check us out that well. So it's I would if you're applying to SpiderForest or any other collective, it's very helpful to actually check it out and see what's all about and check out the work, so that you have an idea of what it's like. Another thing is you get the most benefit from a collective by how much you put into it. In term, even if it's not volunteering, it could still be just interacting with people on a regular basis, making sure you're at least in some way contributing. So at SpiderForest, we have it is required. The only requirement is to review comics that get submissions once a year and vote on that. That's the only actual requirement. But if you do more than that, you get a lot more out of it, I think. I think a big part of our value is a willingness to grow as a creator, whether you're a hobbyist or if you're a professional or somewhere in between. It's really a big part of what we believe in. We want to help each other grow. And so if somebody is more resistant and wants, to growing and wants to just kind of stay where they're at creatively, that's great, but they might necessarily be a good fit for SpiderForest, if that makes sense. So that's kind of what I have. I can't really speak to making a collective because I joined. But a lot of them seem to start small, is what I've noticed. The newer ones that I linked, those ones are fairly recent. So I think I'm kind of excited because collectives seem to be kind of having a bit of a comeback because of the pushback with things going on with Webtoons and the other platforms censoring. When you host your own website, you don't have to censor anything. In fact, it's funny. I make versions. There's a SpiderForest, so to speak, version that my self-hosted website of some pages, and this is the page I put everywhere else. There's one page where there's a butt, right? So it's like I can't
The
have
butt cut.
the butt. Yeah, and I put that on the website, and because I couldn't put it anywhere else. So the website readers got the benefit of the butt, and nobody else did. So for me, just having, because self-hosted, if you have a self-hosted website independently, which I did for a while, I'm not hosted by SpiderForest. Not all of us are. It's a little lonely, but having SpiderForest is a group of self-hosted people who have their own websites, can do whatever they want on their own websites, whether it's hosted by SpiderForest or not. Is pretty fantastic, and being able to help each other grow as far as our skill set and in whatever way we want. It's awesome.
Yeah, I echo a lot of what Max was saying as well, that you have much more control of your own pages, and then you have like-minded people who share your genre or share your visions and so forth. Part of joining SpiderForest, one of the most memorable moments, which I think reflects the values of us as well for improvement and collectivity and community, is that when we were onboarding, Kay, who made Heart of Keel, they did a drawing of all of us together arriving at the doors of SpiderForest Mansion, and it was just absolutely so welcoming to be able to join a group of people who want to improve and want to uplift each other, share readership, and share the same perspectives on webcomics in general. And so I think, yeah, I agree with a lot of what other people have said, which is, prior to being a part of the elective, checking out the webcomics, chatting with the creators, see if you'll be happy interacting with the members there. Sorry about my kid. It's important to get sense of that history and culture and how things are done. And like what everyone has been saying, that it's not really a mark of approval to get in. Some collectives might be a bit more project driven, and some are more thematic, casual, and you have to kind of see if your vibes kind of go well with them. And it can be a great collective, but not the right fit. Sometimes the time commitment and the membership requirements might just be a bit too much, or just not something that you're interested in, and that's totally fine as well. For starting a collective, I think it's important to have a good vision of what sets your collective apart from others, some of the values that you guys will be engendering, and what the collective as a whole want to achieve. Like, for example, what does your collective provide to the members? What can the members participate in? Like what Delphina was saying and Christina was saying as well, which is how members are recruited, maintained, and what are some of the structured activities that sort of become part of the tradition of the collectives. Things to also consider maybe like the work ethic and audience. We talked a little bit about how webcomic collectives can, unite around a theme or genre or readership. And that's super helpful because I think one of the most favorite moments of being a reader for me is clicking those links that go out to other stories and that whole sense of community. And, as a voracious reader, it's really nice to find webcomics that sort of share that same sort of thematic or vibes and so forth. Other thoughts can be like similar motives, or if your webcomic collectives are sharing a similar sense of a heartwarming series or something that's more sort of tension filled and so forth. And it's always nice to kind of see these individuals being friends over on social media as well, and seeing how each other uplifts them, fan arts for each other. So I think those are sort of important things to think about when starting a collective. It's a lot of hard work, but I would say that the rewards are definitely worth it.
I agree with what everyone has said so far. I'll just reiterate, if you're going to join a collective, look at them before you join. I think that goes for everything. Look at the culture of anything you want to join before you join it. So I'll skip right to the second point. If you're going to start a collective, I haven't done so myself, but biggest lesson that I've learned from watching SpiderForest is having a clear policy charter is really important, and also transparency, because not everyone who wants to join your collective is going to be able to join. So you need to be able to really clearly show why you've admitted some people and not others. And that for SpiderForest is just, we have a voting system. It's just as simple as that. But you need to be really transparent so that you have the trust of the community around you, so that people who haven't been able to get in 1 year, they feel like, well, it's not that I'm not part of the clique. And you don't want to get into a situation where people think your collective is just a clique of people who are friends with each other and is impermeable to the outside. So I'll reiterate, if you're going to create a collective, make sure the recruiting is really transparent and that people feel like, there's a reason why the members get in or don't get in, and that it's something that's not a secret.
Absolutely. All right. So we've got just a little bit of time left on the clock. If anybody has any questions, we're happy to answer. Don't know what's going on in chat. I can't see it.
All right, I can read out the questions so far. So, as far as checking out a collective, is there any relatively objective source out there to find out what an org is about, professionally or journalistically speaking? And this is from You May Whistle.
Oh, I feel like there's not a lot of people who focus on that. I don't know. What do you think, Darwin?
Well, I know for us, we do have the about page, we have an apply page, we have information about how our process works, but as Delphina said, I don't think there was a centralized list of what each collective is. Most of the collectives we've seen recently have been very new. Some of the collectives that we knew before are no longer with us. So I don't, as Delphina said, I don't think anybody's really kind of focused on that and pulled that together.
Yeah, I'm thinking you would check out the website, see if there's any contact information, any way to email them. Because I'm just imagining if I was someone spinning up a new collective in this year, 2025, it's like, well, ideally someone would have a way of getting an email or an inquiry to me. And then ideally I would be happy to answer their questions, but I can't speak for what other people are doing. It is a little tricky because I think we're kind of in this age of, people sort of putting a lot of their web presence on social media sites, and those are a little bit ephemeral. And so hopefully there'll be more push to kind of build up websites. where you can sort of be like, this is who we are and this is how we do things. But yeah, let's see. Yeah, I guess it's kind of just up to each individual collective to make sure they're putting that information out there. Otherwise, you get the whisper network.
Yeah, I think it would be nice if we get more professional journalistic attention,
That
because
would
I
be
think
nice.
we are a boon to the webcomic community. At least I like to think so. Um, so I just don't know webcomics in general get a whole lot of attention from media. But I think I like to think that maybe in the future people get more fed up with how mainstream media filters a lot of great ideas out due to
The
financial
butts.
reasons. Yeah,
Sorry.
like the butts. Yeah. I was talking more like big project, but they also, yeah, there's no butts on Webtoon, which is really a shame. Um, but what was I going with? I got distracted.
Thanks, Kimmy.
My hope is that with time, I'm counting on the Zoomers for this. That webcomics media that's independent in general will become more popular, and it will become more well known to seek out alternatives. Because one thing SpiderForest does is, I mean, there's a lot. All of our comics are grouped on the webpage, so we can all go in there and anybody can go in there and see what has been voted in. So it's kind of a curated list in a way. So I'm hoping that with time, we'll get more attention for that. We'll see.
Anything else question-wise?
So Nira asks, where do you see SF in 10 years?
Oh boy. Well, what's interesting is I've been with SpiderForest for like maybe 12 years or 13 years at this point. I can't remember. So like I could never figure like where we would be today, like based on how we were before. Like there's just been so many different things going on with social media. There's been so many different like change ups in technology and the way people communicate that like I would have never guessed, but I do feel like we've got a strong culture and we've got a lot of sustainability in our system. And it does seem like we do stay active from year to year and we have a lot of activities. So I have to hope that that's going to continue.
So I kind of echo what Delphina says. I know I've been here since 2011. The audience and the creators in the collective today are definitely reflective of the current culture. And I think if we continue to be proactive, active, accepting, inclusive, I think that we are going to evolve with the change in the culture. I would love to see SpiderForest stick to its current inclusivity, its supportive nature, its ability to continue to bring in new people, support the people who need or want to leave, and with no hard feelings, those sorts of things. And if we can continue that in 10 years, I think we're going to be just as strong. We've been around since 2004. That means we've been 20 plus years. And I think we're going to still be here in 10 years unless something truly drastic happens.
Yeah, I agree that I think we'll still be around, and I think I just have a good feeling that web hosting is gonna start being more popular because since the internet's been kind of crappy in some spaces areas, so that it will be kind of an oasis that people look to. So I have a lot of I'm pretty optimistic. Yeah, it's a tiny Pizza Hut.
A question from Jay Pollock. So, what happens when a webcomic finishes? What's the process with that? Does SF keep the comic on for a certain amount of time? Does the artist have to reapply when and if they start a new webcomic?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So this happens quite a bit. So people wrap up their projects all the time. They can absolutely just put thing on their profile that we have created for them to say this comic is finished, and they get a little finished tag, and it lives on the website for as long as on the SpiderForest website for as long as they want to keep it there. They can also choose to leave the collective, whatever they want to do. That's absolutely okay with us. And we do have application process for people who are starting a new comic specifically for them. That's a little bit different. Do you want to go into that, Darwin, or?
Yeah, if you don't mind. So I am one of those people who has a completed webcomic on the website. The comic I applied with has been done since 2017. So the process is pretty much if a member has a site, has a comic they want to bring in, if it's already connected to their current work, then the application process is waived. So long as it is not mature rated. So I brought in a webcomic that was related to the first comic I did that was teen rated. So I pretty much just said, hey, I want to bring this in. They kind of take a look at it, they give me feedback, and then if there's no real voting process, they just say, oh, okay, looks great. Here's the space, go ahead and build your site, go ahead and get your webcomic put up. Mature comics, on the other hand, have to apply each time. So my second mature comic that I brought in after the first was mature rated, and so I had to get voted on by the collective members in order for me to bring that one in. So that's one of those things that we took on board.
Yeah, I think people can stay as long as they want, even if they don't ever do a comic ever again, is my understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't get kicked out. You don't get like, well, you're gone. You have to keep up a comic for the rest of your life. No, no, no. We're all friends here, and I think we're pretty laid back about it.
Yeah, some people move on to other creative stuff. I know at least one member's doing they're doing games now.
Yeah.
Or they completed a Kickstarter and they're doing an adventure game. So those I mean, comics, you do a comic by yourself, you're developing a lot of skills. So it almost seems inevitable for some people. Of course they're gonna try other things, because if you're doing a comic, you have to try basically a whole lot I had to learn how to do a whole lot of like everything, like lettering, all that stuff, backgrounds. It's a whole skill set, so easily transferable to other things.
All right. And from you, May Whistle, what do y'all think of web rings coming back, specifically in how they relate to collectives, not just a general question? Something like Knife Beetle, which seems like a sort of hemi-collective.
Knife Beetle's great. And like, actually, we do have a couple of people who are in SpiderForest who are also part of the Knife Beetle ring, like Max. Yeah, so I think they're great. I do feel like they're a little different than a collective in that they might not have the focus on the community or the values, but they do have the cross-promotional aspect. And more of that we can get, the better, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's an old concept that's coming back, kind of similar to collectives. I remember web rings back when the internet was still new. It was the 90s. Again, I think it's just coming from people being fed up with social media and wanting to have a more choice. So web rings a great thing to bring in if you want to check out comics. And you want to save some time. If you go through that web ring, you'll find, that's also a curated. One person goes through that, by the way. I can't believe this. One person reads all the comics that applied for Knife Beetle, and they either accept or turn them down, which is amazing. But I think it's wonderful, and I think it's a thing that can mesh well with collectives. So yeah, the rule at SpiderForce is we can't be part of multiple collectives, but I mean, Knife Beetle was not kind of considered in that. Well, correct me if I'm wrong, Delphina, but I don't think Knife Beetle counts in terms of our rules as a
Yeah, you can be
collective.
a part of Knife Beetle. There's same with cartoonist co-op, right?
Hmm.
Like, we kind of evaluate different groups on a case-to-case basis, and also like if they have exclusivity rules that would conflict with the things that we do.
Yeah.
I also want to say I like the the reemergence of web rings. It gives me a lot of old internet nostalgia because that was how I read web comics back in high school. Is I would end up on some website somewhere and be like, oh wow, someone's making this whole little cartoon themselves and they're just putting it on, the internet. It's like a little anime in book form. I'm sorry, I was stupid back then. I didn't know what a webcomic was. And then I would go and click on a links page and I was like, there's more of them. Oh my God. And I like kind of that feeling of like you have a website and it links to other websites and it links to other websites and you can just get more and more like wealth of comics. And I actually want to flush out like a links page for my own website. That's something I need to get better at. And do you guys remember the days when people would have those tiny little like what do you call it? The little banners of like such and such comic, and you could just copy and paste it and put it on your website and have this whole page of just like basically ads that you're willingly putting on your site, being like, yeah, check out this comic. It's great.
I've seen that. I've seen more of that.
Kimmy,
Christina
you
had
had your
something to
hand
say.
up? Yeah.
I don't know who had their hand up.
Oh, Christina did. What's going
Christina.
on?
Yeah, sorry. I was actually just going to say something about the links page, but don't worry about it.
All right. Yeah, links pages are great.
I also want to,
Go for
sorry.
it.
I just wanted to echo what Delphina said. We go through a process of, because there's always new things coming up on the internet, such as Knife Beetle, that we have to go through and kind of like talk about like, hey, does this qualify as a collective? Do we think it's okay for our members to be a part of this? So it's reevaluated every year as new things come out, just to make sure that there's no exclusivity conflict, as Delphina said. That's what I wanted to add.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions? Things we can answer? Mysteries? All good. We could probably wrap it up.
All right. Thank you everyone for coming to this NIF panel. And I'm going to drop the Cartoonist Cooperative donation link in the chat, as well as the Oops All Comic Scene link, which we're featuring. But otherwise, is there anything else that y'all would like to wrap up with?
Yeah, we are at SpiderForest.com. We try to answer any and all questions about what people have, and you can check out our comics there as well. We have a hub and Discord communities, which are open to everyone regardless of membership. So you can come check out our vibe, see what's going on. And if you feel like you have a webcomic and you want to apply, that will be open June 1st, and you can find that link on our website as well. As well as all of our cool comics and our store and our previous anthologies and all that good stuff. So thank you everyone for showing up, the great questions. Thank you to my collective mates for being here. And yeah, that's all I got.
All right. Thank you all so much for coming.
Thank you.
Recording
Right.
stop.